Hello, good evening to you. Happy Friday. How are you doing, everybody who's on this page? Hope you're okay. Hope you've had a good, gentle week. And we are delighted to welcome back Mark Stone. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good, Ashley. How are you?
Really, really well. Really, really looking forward to tonight. After last week, just so many gems, so many pearls of wisdom. I had to go back and listen to it 3 or 4 times just to kind of allow it to all sink in. So thank you. I'm really looking forward to this week. Hello to everybody that's joining us as well. Wow, look at all the people online. Who have we got? We've got Dan, we've got Anne-Marie, we have got Helen, hello Helen, Valerie, Liz, Paula Fryer, Angie. Oh, Angie Page is going to come back and watch on catch up. Angie, you're missing out. There is nowhere else you need to be on a Friday night apart from right here. And for lovely Wendy, hopefully your bandwidth will hold out that you can watch it. And hello, Phil Anderson and Nikki and JB Williamson. And oh my goodness, we've got Kevin Lee online in the house from Florida. Hi, y'all. How you doing? And Ben Davis, you made it, Ben. Fantastic. You found us. You're absolutely in the right place. This is part 2 for everybody who hasn't seen part 1. Part 1 is below on this page, so you can go back and you can catch the link for that. So part 2 of the Trance Masterclass, this is getting into the deeper states. You've had 2 weeks now of working. So what I would like you to do, everybody, is go and grab some water, a pen and paper, because there's going to be lots of notes for you to take down. We'll be right back in about 30 seconds. Hi, everybody. So hopefully by now you've got your notepad, pen, paper, and if you want to light your candles, then by all means do that. It's not normal we do that on a Friday night, but do you know what? I just think we're invoking something a little bit special when we come together to talk about trance in this way. So, Mark, do you want to run us through? So much has happened in the group chat. We've set up a little Facebook group. So much has been discussed there, some absolute gems. So thank you everyone that contributes. But yeah, what do you want to start with this evening?
So we'll just a few little bits that we'll recap on from before. If you haven't watched part 1, it is there. And again, this part will also be left there on Ashley's channel and also on my page. So that it's always accessible for you to go back and re-listen and re-look at stuff. So just to reaffirm that what we're doing really in 3 classes, we're only able to touch on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all of this. And again, all of what we're talking about, what I'm discussing with you, is opinions and views of how I see things and the experiences that I've had that lead me to believe that. It's important with all of our mediumship that we are discerning and that we question and we look for ourselves. Just because someone else says something that's their belief or their experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just agree with that. You have to look at what it means to you. How does it work for you? And what do you believe and what do you understand? So I always want to make that clear that what we're discussing here are ideas to hopefully help you explore what you're doing with your mediumship, to explore the altered states in whatever form they take with you. Okay, so it's really important just to reassert that for you so that, you know, don't go away and think, right, if I'm going to do this, and this, then this will be the result, because it's not like we're baking a cake and we're going to put in all these ingredients, and if we measure them exactly, every single person is going to come out with a scrumptious cake. There's just certain things that people do that make them wonderful, and others just fall flat as a pancake. So with our mediumship as well, because of the uniqueness of every individual, how the other world will work with you, how these altered states will affect you, and in what direction they take you is equally unique to you. So what I want to get across to you in all of this, and if you listen back into part 1, the altered state affect us in many different ways, but the important aspect with all areas is the blending with the other world, whether you're working with your mental mediumship, whether you're working with your healing and your readings or your public demonstrations, whether you're working with trance mediumship, trance healing, trance speaking, whether we're going into even the physical phenomena states for those that are drawn that way, or that things start to happen. Again, remember that these all require the sitting and the blending. So part of that was what we talked about last week, and we will continue to discuss it in this week as well. But it's important. And there was a wee discussion that was being had in the one of the groups afterwards about the sitting and how people sit and how they prefer to sit, when they prefer to sit. Now, for me, we discussed a bit of that in the first episode of this, but for me, it's about a personal thing. I like sitting with particular music because music then becomes a key to my consciousness, my ear. So when I hear a certain piece of music that I sit with, that has an effect on me. When I used to sit in trance stroke physical circles, I used to have a playlist of songs that were meaningful to me. And as those songs would affect my energy, it would also affect the energy that the spirit world were bringing in as well. However, I also sit without music as well. When I go to do demonstrations, I don't start to have loads of music being played left, right, and centre, because sometimes it can become a bit of a technical nightmare for whoever's running the evening if they're having to reach around and touch stuff. So I sit sometimes in the peace and the stillness at home, or sometimes I go and sit outside in just the natural sound of nature. So again, the choice of that is entirely up to you. If you become used to sitting to one particular piece of music, it will become like a routine in the mind, that there's a part of you that almost induces that letting go, going off with that music. Many years ago, people used to sit with Buddhist Trance and Peace music, which is a beautiful CD. And I was at a workshop and I had Buddhist Trance and Peace music running in the background very quietly. Almost you wouldn't know it was there. And at this workshop, and it was first thing in the morning, there's about 20 odd in the group, and it was a mental mediumship workshop. But as we were starting to just discuss the morning's work, several people were doing this. And I was thinking, I'm surely not boring them within the first 15 minutes of talking. And then I suddenly went, do you sit to this? Do you sit to this music? And all 6 of them, not all sitting together, use the same piece of music in their trance circles. And so just hearing it, even in the background, didn't that much, started to take them off and away, because their awareness was used to that, was used to that. So again, for some people, experiment with music that you like. Other people, if you prefer to sit in the stillness, the quiet, those of you that maybe particularly are wanting to develop more clairaudient aspects may want that silence, so that you're able to just sit and be aware purely of the thoughts. But for other people, sometimes being too quiet makes them very conscious of everything that's going on. So again, everybody's slightly different. And saying that, when I go to do a demonstration of trance, I do not like my audience to be quiet when I'm going off, because I'm then aware of 50 or however many pairs of eyes staring at me, and I'm then very conscious I'm sitting there and something's got to happen. Whereas I ask the congregation to natter, to talk amongst themselves. They can tune into what's happening with the energy if they like, but it then means that there's just a little bit of noise that's a distraction that just allows me to disappear off. Now, other mediums will ask for perfect silence when they're going to sit for the trance state. Other mediums will maybe want some more rousing music, or particular music that they feel they have to have played. So again, as you move forward with your development, your unfoldment, you'll find what works and what's right for you with regards to having music, sitting in silence. When we sit in groups with our students, we ask them what their preference of music is. And then if anything happens where speech comes, we just fade that music out and sit and let that person speak. And then when they start to go silent again, we just bring the music back in and out. So we use that music in that way. So, you know, it's again, it's a personal preference to your individual sitting. And again, whether you're sitting on your own or in a group, you can come to those agreements again. Okay, so that, I know somebody wanted that to be brought up. So
brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark. Gosh, there's so much to get through. And I know that we're going to be talking really about some of the things that might have come up for people. And I appreciate everyone sitting in a different circumstance. Some people are by themselves at home. Some people have family members that can sit with them. Some people are sitting over Zoom or trying lots of other things. And everyone's at a different kind of places in their releasing to working in the altered state. But it's something that's really important. I know we were going to talk about this evening, which was about how you kind of release your own attachment to your own thoughts, release and go deeper.
Well, that everybody has this, I want to go deeper, as if it's, and if you remember when we were talking last time, we were saying that everyone's way that their awareness moves is uniquely different. And really what we need to look at is where we've been sitting. And again, it doesn't matter how long you have between these sessions. I mean, we've got them at 2 weeks, but obviously we're not saying that in 6 weeks you're suddenly going to turn into trance medium extraordinaire, because this is again an unfoldment that goes on for the rest of your lifetime, that continues to develop, continues to unfold. So what's important is that as you're sitting, we're starting to get used to sitting. I know so many people that go on workshops and don't sit, they don't meditate, they don't sit in the power. And therefore they're then saying, but I want to do trance and I want to go into the trance states. I'm interested in phenomena, or I'm interested in different areas. And yet they're not used to that sitting. So it's important, I think, that you get used to that sitting, like we said last time. Get used to the sitting. We set you the one of the exercises to get that flow of thought going, about writing down the thoughts that come from the other world. And so what's important as we're sitting, as we're looking, is that as we start to sit, we're asking the other world to draw close. And if you remember, in that sitting in the power, we said to the spirit world, here I am, come and blend with me, help me to be aware of your presence. So what we're wanting to do is get used to the energy and the feeling of those people that are drawing close to us, regardless of what aspect of trance or mediumship is going to come out of it. Okay, so you're looking to have those who work with you come and blend with you and start to become aware of them. So this meeting of minds, if you like, because you're blending in the energy, you're becoming aware of the minds that are there in the other world, the feelings and the sensations that comes along with them. There are questions that are coming up in the talk, but we'll come to things.
We'll get to you. I see you, Jennifer. I see your question, Jennifer. We will get to you, because specifically Mark wants to talk, because Mark is so passionate about healing. We are definitely going to talk about
otherwise you'll be here for 3 hours tonight, not 1.5, and I'll go off on one. But we will talk about the healing side of things as well, because that's part of the older states that we're going to talk about. So as we're blending with these personalities, we're starting to come to know the sense and the feeling of who is there. Now, again, lots of people have different opinions on the idea of guides and helpers, and lots of people have different ideas on personalities that exhibit themselves through the trance state. Some people will tell you that they're not really discarnate personalities. They're aspects of the medium's mind, they're creations of the medium's mind, and they don't need those personalities, etc. That may be true belief for some people. For me, as I think I mentioned in the last one, but I'm not sure, because we've done so many lovely talks on different things. But for me, I always ask for certain elements of things to be revealed, to prove things to me. And one of the people, who's one of the main people that I work with, he gave me information about his life, and I was able to find out that life on an electoral roll. Going back, I haven't managed to find out much more about his life, but it was just enough for me to give my questioning mind enough to say, yes, that's it. And I'm not alone in mediums that have been able to have if I say ordinary people from the spirit world rather than famous people that would be known, where they've been able to go back and find information about their doctors, their healers, their speakers, their people, whoever they may be. And so, but not everyone may have that. That's not necessarily needed. However, what we're wanting to do is build the relationship, and this comes in this blending, that we're blending with the personalities. We're starting to get to know. Now, this is where, with your notebooks and things, are important, that when you've had a sitting in the power, you may see particular colors, you may see particular images, you may go off on journeys, you may be aware of certain personalities showing themselves to you, that you see them. Some of you may not see, but you may feel a certain nature and a personality. Those are the sort of things that you need to note down. Anything that starts to come in those sittings, to see if there's a running thread, to see if there's a repeating of the same feeling, the same personality, the same essence of what happens to you. When I sit with students and I hear them speak, I was sitting with a group of students only on last night, and one of them spoke, and it was quite interesting because it felt different in the way that it came than it normally does. And there were certain things in there that started to become almost like little messages within the speech. And when we came out, both of us that were observing talked about this. It felt different. And the person said it felt like suddenly someone just stepped in at the last minute who was different, just before it all started to happen. So we were able to notice the difference in what normally happens when they sit and what was happening last night. So when you look at your own sitting, you're looking at what's unfolding. You're not trying to compare 1 week to the next or 1 day to the next to the next. What you're doing is starting to keep a note of what you've become aware of, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. So again, as you're going through, you're starting to see, well, this seems to happen. This feeling always seems to come. And then as we're sitting, and again, in our sitting, whether we're sitting on our own or whether we're sitting in a group, we can start to build up this relationship. And as you're becoming aware of the other world, I always say to my students, we often sit and become too passive when we sit for our mediumship generally, almost as if we're going to go to sleep and nothing's going to happen. Now, there are some aspects of mediumship, if you were going into, say, physical phenomena, where you may want this passivity of blending and almost letting yourself completely disappear. But there's a level within our mental mediumship and our trance sittings where we maybe got to have a bit more activity within. And when I mean that, what I mean is to engage with the other world. So, for instance, when you hear something in your mind, echoing in your mind, respond to it. Respond to the thought. Talk back in your mind to the other world. Don't just sit there thinking, I've just got to be totally empty, totally devoid. You're entering into a conversation within the heart, within the mind, within the awareness. So therefore, it needs to be active. If someone comes up to you and says hello, and you don't say anything back, and then they say hello again to you, and you don't say anything, you're ignoring. There's not going to be a flow of conversation there. So it's entering into that conversation. That's the same with those of you working with the mental mediumship, where you'd work on a platform or work in sittings. I say to people, just imagine you're having a chat with someone who just happens to be in the other world. Don't treat it any differently mentally, because otherwise you're thinking, I've got to get a message, I've got to be evidential. I just think, someone's come to say hello and have a natter. And it takes this pressure off. The same when we're sitting, if we're looking to move towards these altered states. Sometimes, and a couple of the conversations that we've had with people and private messages where people are saying, I'm trying to do. Don't try, just allow this blending to come, because it's only over time that these things establish themselves. We said it before, we'll say it again. We live in a fast society. We kind of have everything at the touch of a button, at the flick of a switch. And unfortunately, we're putting that same value onto mediumship and unfoldment, that we're going to flick a switch and that's going to be it. We're going to be an instant something. Mm-hmm. Sitting, when you look at a lot of the people, we talked about this before, but again, sitting is years and years and years of development. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, every single thing is going to be years in the making. But again, if we're putting the pressure of wanting it like that now, we're putting a pressure on our own mind. We're not going to be letting go. We're going to be too interested in, was it a result? Was it a result? Was there a result? Rather than just letting go to that sit and letting it come and following the lead of the other world. This is why the relationship between us and the other world is so important. I think what's happened in life a little bit now is that sometimes people are wanting teachers on the earth to answer it all for them. And here I am doing just some of that. I've just fired myself, that's all right. But we forget that we need to build the relationship with the other world, who are the ones who are working with us, and know what is required to do with us. Because again, a medium might have an opinion on your mediumship, on your unfoldment, might not be the right opinion. So what we need to be able to do, even if someone tells us something, we need to go away and sit and hand it over to the spirit world and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about what this medium says? You know, after we've finished an evening like this, sit and say, well, spirit world, what do you think of that then? What do you think of what he said there? Tell me about it. You know, allow me the chance to explore it with you. So, because the spirit world, whenever we go to these workshops, whenever we do things, I personally believe that the spirit world is also there having a good earwig about what's going on. And so that's often, you know, when we have our circles, when we have our groups, or we have our discussions, which is why, you know, talking with people of a like mind, the other world are also listening in. And I think being able to put out to the other world and say, do you know, help me, guide me with this. Now, again, sometimes that guidance leads you to find someone on the earth who then engages with you and moves you on. That's wonderful. And, you know, we often, people say, you know, it's almost like I was led to you to find you, led to this video, etc. And that may well be true. The other world might be engineering that very thing so that the right things in answer to your questions come. But I think there is nothing that can substitute for the guidance from the other world. So when we are sitting asking for the other world to start to guide us, to help us, and to make us aware of what we need to know, rather than asking 1,000,001 questions, what we need to know, here I am, spirit world, I've come to sit, to blend with you. What is it you want me to know? Where is it you want to take me? Where is it you want to lead me? Now, there was a question that was asked about, I go in and I seem to focus on healing. Now, whether that's a conscious choice of I'm sitting for healing, I'm sitting for development of mental mediumship, I want to sit and develop trance. Of course, you know, it's our time and it's our choice to sit. And again, we might wish it to be focused in a certain area. Again, I'll refer you back to what we've said before. Is that what you want, or is that what you feel you are being drawn to by the other world? So, and I'm not telling people off to say, you know, sit and ask the other world to help you achieve something. But sometimes, you know, we're being told stuff or we want something, but maybe something else has to come first. Maybe something else has a greater importance in your development. Yeah. You know, that, you know, you need to have this little bit of development in one area before you look at another. You know, Gordon Smith, one of his circle leaders, put him in a healing circle initially and said, I want you to go and sit in this healing group. And he said, but I want to develop the mediumship. He said, you need to learn to blend and to be able to connect and to have compassion and empathy for the person sitting in front of you, which is what you would need as a medium, because it's all a healing aspect. So being a part of that healing is going to have a great effect on the messages that we give and the understanding of the sitter, the understanding of the emotion and everything of the other world. So again, we're having to learn many different facets. This is why, if we're not careful, sometimes we only sit for one particular thing. We can sometimes block out the level of experience. I'll again get you to look back at great mediums of the past. They could do and explored all avenues of mediumship, and certain things then became their forte.
Yeah, that was a question that came up in a private message to me, actually, not in the group chat. Just to say, I'm really confused and I'm really conflicted, because my heart says I want to try lots of different things and I want to explore all of the gifts of the spirit, and all of my potentiality, and see kind of where my heart lies. And they've been told they can only sit to develop, and they've got to, it's almost like stars on a bat, you've got to start here and then do that and then do that and then do that and then do that. Well, you're even allowed to sit in altered state work. That's for really experienced people. And yet in her heart, she was just having this really strong feeling. And every time she was asking spirit, they were saying, just go quiet and go within and go still and allow us to teach you. Not go to all of the workshops.
Yeah. And you see, the thing is, there are pros and cons to all manner of things. But listen to what she was saying. My heart says, the real feeling within me says. So I always think that, when we go out and we go to circles and workshops and things, and I know we discussed this last time about, I think we did, it might have been another group. I'm so sorry. If I repeat myself, you're just needing to hear it again. But somebody asked me a while back about, what if someone's sitting in more than one group? Shouldn't you tell them they shouldn't? And I said, well, the traditional way of looking at development was that normally you sat in a circle, one particular circle, and you stayed with one particular teacher. And the problem was that if you sat in more than one, and I've even have this still now, where I have people sit in a number of different circles, not necessarily with me, and then they say, oh, well, one medium tells me this, but then our other circle leader tells us to do that. Then what starts to happen is too many cooks are spoiling the mixture that's going on. So for the person that was asking you, Ashley, I'd say this, when you go to workshops or circles that you sit in, you're going into a framework that a teacher here on the earth is kind of setting their boundaries, their rules, their way that they work. That's absolutely fine. So when you go there as that person, as that student, you want to work with the reverence of the framework that they create. When you sit at your home, when you sit in your own power, then open it up into the way that it feels right, and say to the spirit, well, where is it you want to take me? When I was in my teens and in my 20s, I would be sitting and trying all different stuff out. I would sit with this and I'd look at that and I'd do this exercise and I'd read this book and I'd try that visualization. I'd try all manner of different things to open up loads of different aspects of mediumship and awareness. Some things used to work for me, some things didn't used to work for me. But the thing is that, some people, because they have such a clear flow of chatting to the other world, that there are people, and there are cases of this all back through spiritualism, where they haven't had contact from outside teachers for quite a long period of time, and the other world has taught them. And the other world, bear in mind, if we go back into the pioneers here, we're going back when there was no Tinternet, so none of this existed. There weren't necessarily even spiritualist churches. There weren't workshops, courses, or books. You had a spiritualist church if you were lucky. Your circles were as rare as hen's teeth, or they were held in your home. And so you sat and handed over to the other world and said, whatever you want, we're here for you. And so the expectation and the pressure to do something was taken off. Now we kind of come into a very modern era where we pay our money and we want results. And so therefore we're starting to put a different spin on unfoldment. We're, rather than sort of saying, I'm quite interested just to sit there and see what happens, we're kind of sat there results led.
Yeah, very much.
And looking at, is it going to happen? What's going to happen? Is anything going to happen? And that's then putting a pressure onto us and onto our mediumship. If our sitters have that, if we're in a group where others are sitting for us, their pressure of expectation and performance can also influence and affect the sitter, the medium sitting, which again we'll talk about a bit more on once we've got into the idea of, once those of you that move into trance speaking, how your circles might go about helping you or hindering you, as the case may be. So this sitting, because Jenny was asking just there in the comments about should I be sitting for healing? Am I setting an intent? I would say that if you want to sit and send healing, you know, you could sit and send healing at the end, specifically at the end of sitting, or you could send healing on a separate meditation at a separate point if you wanted to. But to sit to blend with spirit rather than to sit to do would be preferable. But you could put healing in at the end of it. You know, there are lots of debates on with physical mediumship that when you finish sitting, you don't want to be always sending the energy out. You actually want to be asking the spirit world to hold it. But that's a whole different ballgame for another set of lectures in another whenever. But so when we're sitting, for us, we're sitting in the power, we're sitting for the spirit to be with us, to be working with us, to be blending with us, to be affecting our mind, our awareness, our ability, whether we're sitting on our own or we're sitting in a group. Okay, so it's about us. We are the focus of that sitting. At that moment, you are the center of the universe to the other world. You are the sole focus of their attention. You know, there's a lovely, we used to, when Glyn and I used to sit sometimes, we'd say, spirit world, one whom you love is here. Come and blend with me.
Oh,
and just to be open in that way. Here I am. Come and work with me. You're leaving the mind open to not I want, I need, answer me this, tell me that. Just saying, here I am, come and be with me. Come and help me, show me the way. What is it you want? You know, thy will be done, not my will be done. And so there's an element of this that, and again, because of maybe the way that workshops and things are structured now, there is a demand that gets placed. There's nothing wrong in saying to the other world, I would love to be able to do this, go here, do that. Nothing wrong in having that in the mind, but don't block out the rest of it because that's what you're focused on.
Yeah.
Because there's other things that could come when we're working. Different aspects of our mediumship will unfold at different points in our life. They will come to the fore and then die away. They'll come to the fore and then die away. The same as when you sit, power builds and ebbs and flows, builds and ebbs and flows. And so again, we've got to become aware of this feeling of the movement of the power as we sit, to understand how it's moving us, what it's moving us towards. So again, this blending and coming to know who's there with you. Now, again, you may not know lots about who's there. You may just get a feeling, a sensation, a change of emotions, a change of mental affectation as you're blending with the other world. So this is this starting of this blending to recognize who's there. And, you know, as things unfolded for me, I started to realize there were more people behind the scenes than I realized once those trance states started to sort of unfold even more. So, you know, different personalities, different people may come, or you may only feel that one person is the one that's there the majority of the time. So again, who is working with you? That's something that you've got to explore. And again, you can ask the other world, you know, if, for instance, there's those of you who are working on platform work, ask when you say, I'd love to come to know who works with me with my mental mediumship, who works with me on the platform, who can I ask for help with my mental mediumship, who can I ask for help with my healing, who can I ask for help with my trance work. Is there a particular communicator that comes or inspires, or are there many? So that we're starting to, just the same as anything else, we're asking who's there with me, who's there to help me, and encouraging the opening of a dialogue between us and the other world. Now, again, how long that's going to take you is unique to you. For some people, they go, oh, I don't mind who it is or what it is. I don't care. And there's a part of me that goes, well, I you know, trance to me is incredibly intimate because it's the closest blending of your heart, your mind, and your soul than probably you even get with someone on the earth. So therefore, I want to know and understand the people that are drawing close to me, who are affecting me and influencing me in my sitting. So for me, that's an important aspect, you know, and again, we said this last week, but we'll reiterate it again as things are coming, that the spirit world will come often in a way that is suitable or appeases the mind of the medium.
Yeah.
So for some people, they see the spirit world in forms of animals. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the spirit of an animal that comes to you, but if you are maybe more trusting in animals than you are in people, you are likely to be more aware of animals that come and talk to you in the guise of a spirit helper. Now, some mediums might say, "Well, this is silly. You shouldn't be doing that." But for some people, it's the start of trusting this discarnate source. I can remember being in a workshop with someone who had always used to see an eagle, and the eagle used to talk to them. And one day we were doing something in the workshop. I think we were sort of sitting in the power, and she got really quite upset. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Well, my eagle's gone." And I said, "Oh, right, okay." And she said, "But there was this Native American woman stood all dressed in feathers." And I went, "Do you think that might be your eagle, but that's the human form now?" And it unfurled that that's what it was. But for ages, she needed to see it one way, and then it unfolded into another. So again, as you're working, you hear people talk about different mythical creatures and angels and ascended masters and extraterrestrial and all sorts of things. Now, whether or not these things are who and what they appear to be is another matter entirely. But it's something that resonates with the mind of the individual. So we have to always look at what is coming, what is being said. Does it make sense? Does it resonate with us as individuals? And again, find that help and support where there are people who work in those areas or in those fields where it resonates. But the thing is that, again, an outsider who doesn't have that experience, or even someone in the movement that doesn't have that experience, will be too quick to just, no, it doesn't exist, doesn't happen. Now, again, mediumship, the understanding of the universe of the spirit world is continually expanding. I have my own beliefs on things. I believe I'm quite a rigid monkey in many ways in what I think and what I believe, but I'm kind of dyed-in-the-wool, hard, old school spiritualism, because that's where I've been brought up and through with things. And because of my questioning mind and discerning, I do question a lot. And some things I go, well, if they're happy, they're happy. Wouldn't do for me. But that's me. So for everyone as an individual, when you are sitting, what unfolds and what unfurls, let it. Don't be too quick to judge. Where if you start to see or feel things, see what happens as it unfolds. See what happens as you sit and bring these personalities closer. Now, again, we talked about this intent of sitting. Now, obviously, if you are interested in trance from a healing perspective, then what you want to be able to do is bring the sitting and the blending for the closeness of the spirit into experiments with your healing.
Yeah.
So if healing is your bag, that's where you're being drawn and that's what it's exhibiting within you at this point, then have an experiment with the trance state. So again, when you sit and maybe you're thinking about sending out healing, ask that those who work with healing to draw close so that you can feel their closeness. You can feel the personality, the nature, the energy of those individuals. Ask them to talk to you about healing. Ask for them to bring that influence in. Then have the chance of sitting with someone who you're going to give some healing to. But again, as you're blending, asking the other world to come in, to bring in their energy into the healing. Now, whether you do that hands off or hands on, obviously, if you're doing any healing hands on, be very aware of where your hands are. We are healers, not feelers at the end of the day, and make sure where we're working is appropriate. So often with students, what I get them to do is sit one behind the other in a chair, and if they want to put their hands on the shoulders, they can, or if they feel they want to stand up, they can, or if they want to sit down, or even if they just want to sit behind and not touch, or sit in front of someone and not touch. Again, see what starts to happen, because what you're doing is you're saying to the world, okay, here's the state of that I like working in healing. Now let's see if we can just take this a little deeper. What happens if I surrender more to you rather than me? If I let your mind, let your influence start coming in closer at this point, what happens? What starts to happen within my mind, my awareness? What am I becoming aware of? So again, those of you that are involved in healing, start to experiment, to explore in that way. Okay.
Super. Thank you, Mark. Hopefully that answered your question, Jennifer, because I know there's lots of people who are online who are really very, 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 their heart lies with healing, and yet they're interested in this call into these different states of energy. And the things that kind of come up for me, just to reiterate kind of what you've said and say it back to you, is to be very intentional about using the modality of the altered state. So if you're feeling the draw to healing, to not release into the way that you would normally deliver healing, but actually to be very intentional about trance healing and what you would like to work.
It's you're taking it. So what you're doing, if you are already working in a field, an area of mediumship, and you want it to go further, then let the other world come closer as you're working in that aspect. So again, the same if you wanted to experiment within sittings. Sit and let that altered state affect you more deeply as you're sitting, to see what starts to happen to the mediumship, to the awareness of the sitter. That, you might be sitting, starting to give a reading to someone, but then start to find a very powerful healing that's still coming in. You're still giving the reading, but something else is starting to move into it. Something else tangible is starting to happen. And I can give you an example of this. Years ago, when I had my first centre, I was sitting, giving a lady a sitting, and all of a sudden in the room, we were overpowered physically by the smell of this sweet fragrance. And literally, I went, what on earth is someone doing out in the shop? I opened the door. There was no smell outside the door, and we'd been sat in that room for an hour, and this perfume was overwhelming, and we both smelt it. It wasn't just me having a clairolfactory experience. It was a solid waft. And then literally, as soon as we finished the sitting, it went, and it was not present in the room anymore. So something came in on a much more tangible level because of just surrendering to that power more and more as it was coming. It wasn't a trance sitting, but I was very involved in this moment. And then all of a sudden, this perfume was in the room that was there, that was built up with the energy of both of us sitting. So again, as you're sitting and working in different states, see if you can move the mind into these states of blending more. And again, there's not a particular technique, because loads of people go, well, how do you do it? It's about bringing that closeness, and then rather than trying to always control it and have it your way, just saying to God, come closer, let me just be aware of this a bit more. What is that? And just letting it happen naturally. It's not a forced thing. You can't force yourself to go, this thing, I've got to go deeper. And it's like you're trying to push and submerge the consciousness down. Yeah. Now you see, the more you struggle, the more you're doing, which means the more active your mind is rather than surrendering to the flow. So, I think
this is a really important point that I know keeps coming up, and is probably the crux of many people's many years of misery trying to sit. And you mentioned it earlier, which is about, this is not a completely passive state. So if you're trying to get to that moment, that beautiful moment where you just surrender to the spirit and you step away, it's
a conscious cooperation. All mediumship is we. It is you and the other world. It's a conscious cooperation, a blending and an allowing. Because we can push for something, but if the other world isn't going with it, we're going to just struggle with it and not go there. If the other world wants us to go somewhere and we resist and struggle with it, we're kind of going nowhere. So we have to be willing to move with this power. We have to be willing. This is again the thing. What do the other world know about you and your mediumship that you may not be conscious of now? We existed before we came to this life. It is believed, I'll put believe in there, that we chose why we were coming, what we were going to do, how we were going to be in the world, chose the pathways maybe ahead of all of this. But somehow in that birthing procedure, we've forgotten the majority of it. And that's what we tend to try and rediscover through our unfoldment. But those in the other world who work with us know these things. They know the potential. They know what's there. So they can help us to unfold this. They can help us, but they are bound by what we will and won't do. Yeah. So we put shackles around the legs of the spirit world when we tell them, I want it this way, I want it that way, and they will bend to work with us in the best way that they can. But sometimes we're telling them how we want it rather than how they want it or how it could be. So, and this is the same for absolutely every part of our mediumship. You know, a lot of people want a prescriptive formula to follow. Do this and you will be a this, and you'll always give a good message. Do this and it, you know, mediumship is unique in every moment that it happens. But the more you're able to blend and listen and move with that power, the more that will come out of it. So you're sitting, regardless of trance, you're sitting, you're blending, your flow of mind, your flow of awareness, the ability just to let the flow of thought be with you is paramount for all of it, regardless of what area you go into. So it's learning to expand and let this mind and this awareness have its ability to just be free to what happens, to be able to open into these different areas, these different experiences. So if say, for instance, you're interested in art, for instance, psychic art, spiritual art, portraiture, etc. And there's a wonderful, there's a number of wonderful spirit artists. But there's one particular lady that I've seen who sits with her eyes closed. There's a wonderful medium called Lynn Cotterill. And she is eyes closed. She has two pencils. Her hands come up like this. And I've had students who've sat at the front watching, looking up, because I said, just see if her eyes ever open. I mean, I love Lynn to bits, but and she would literally should be, and the hands go like this. Wonderful. And she draws the most remarkable pictures in the altered state. But when I talked to her and talked about it, and she said initially, when I first started experimenting with this with the other world, pictures were coming out with Picasso, an ear up here, an eye there, and nose there. But as time went on, the clarity and the composition of the pieces were coming together. And so again, the spirit world will explore with you. So if you've got that interest in art, and you had Kevin Lee on here the other week, which I immensely enjoyed the precipitation. Yeah. You know, then again, there's another aspect of sitting and working with the art, to sit and see if it's a physical form of art. So again, you know, if you can have a pencil in hand for ordinary art, or to just start to draw what you see as you see things, or just to sit and have a pencil in your hand. And if your hand starts to move when you're in that state, let it. You know, you might find it's writing, you might find that it's pictorial. But again, if there's, you know, the spirit world know and understand. But again, we might not have explored areas. So this is where, when your friend said about going on workshops, you know, someone will say to you, oh, you've got a real talent for this. You really must sit and do this and only this. Well, I went to a psychic art workshop and someone told me that and said, you really ought to work on this and only this. I was just like, I wish I could, but actually I do so much other stuff. This is my playtime, doing the art. This is my play. So, but again, I'm still exploring and working in those different states. I'm still exploring. I'm interested to see what comes out of these things. And I know that it's an experiment. I'm not going to sit there and go to the other world. Well, I'm going to try this a couple of times, and if it doesn't work, well, that's it, out the window. Because that will also show to me that actually I'm not really that interested in it if I'm only going to give it a couple of weeks, and then if it doesn't work, then I'm going to leave it alone. So the patience of someone sitting for development and unfoldment actually is a very key indicator of what may unfold. If somebody is going to go from group to group because nothing's happening, we're seeing an impatience. Yeah. And we said in the last session, if you are very impatient and want it yesterday, it almost feels like the brakes go on even harder, because you've got to learn just to be patient, just to be surrendering to what happens. I can remember sitting and listening to Glyn talk about a circle that sat for physical phenomena for 17 years, weekly, every week for 17 years, with no visible phenomena. And they decided that they were going to close the circle 17 years. So that's 17 times 52. Don't ask me what that is, but it's a lot of sitting. And they sat for all those years. And on the final night, they said, this is going to be our last. They had this circle. Nothing happened in the circle. They closed the circle. They went out to the kitchen to go and have a cup of tea and a fag. And as they did that, the table followed them out the room. And then it followed, and then it started. Now, my question would be, was the desire to have the phenomena getting in the way of the phenomena occurring? And the minute that they let go of the idea of having to have it, did it allow it to come in some way? Now, we don't know. I asked him that question and we never got to the bottom of the answer. But the fact is, do we place this pressure that something has to happen and then that will get in the way of it naturally occurring? So stop trying, start allowing. So we've talked about the trance and the art, but then if we're looking at the idea of speaking, those of you that are interested in moving towards trance speaking, whether it's philosophical, whether it's a clairvoyant aspect, but what we're doing is, as we're having this blending, and again, hopefully as you go back over things, you'll realize that, when we get this blending, as we get this blending, thoughts start to come. And that's what I was getting you to do last time, about writing down the thoughts. So when we're sitting, we might get lots of different sensations. We talked about this building and dropping, or ebbing and flowing of power. Sometimes you feel almost as if there's an overwhelming impetus to speak, almost as if the words are physically coming up through your body, wanting to come out and speak. Now, if that's what's occurring with you, you may only have, just a quick answer to your questions, Dan. Do you need to be artistic to have artistic ability to do this like art? Not at all. If you talk to all the people, or some, they said that they couldn't draw beforehand and that they learned and that they built up. And of course you can learn drawing skills to improve your drawing. There's a lovely psychic artist in America called Rita Berkowitz, who I met. She was a trained artist. Her psychic art is beautiful as well. But if you talk to people like Sandy Ingham, she says she's not a trained artist. Lynn only started her psychic art because she kept seeing faces. And one night she said, okay, I give in, I'll draw your face. And she said, I don't even know where that came from. But then she started to learn to draw the faces that she was seeing. So you don't have to be. But I would also say that if you go onto YouTube, there are loads of wonderful tutorials on how to do structures of faces and everything else. Great resource. If you learn to draw a bit, you'll find that the spirit world will be able to do things with your ability as well. Okay, so I thought I'd answer that just to tie it off, Dan. So speaking, so we get this impetus and this urge that may come. Now, sometimes you may only hear the word hello or good evening or a sentence or just one word. Now, often students go, well, there was only one word, so I wasn't going to say it because I didn't want to sound stupid. Now, the problem is that, remember what I said earlier about someone talking to you? So if you picked up the phone, and we will use the analogy, I shall use my phone, which isn't on. If I'm phoning someone and it picks up and I go, hello, and nothing happens, what do I do again? Hello, hello, hello. I don't go into a full conversation until something starts. So in a way, what I say to students is, if a word comes, whether you feel that you're still very conscious or aware, engage and cooperate. Say the word, even if you just say hello and then don't say anything for the rest of the time, but you sit, then say it. Now, if you're sitting on your own and you hear the word hello, you've got one of two choices. There's nobody to say it to in the room, so you can hold the conversation with the other world in your mind. If you've got like a dictaphone or a telephone that you want to give off, that you want to have on, then have that on and record. It gives the spirit world knowing that someone will hear what's being said at some point. Problem is, never like going back and listening to your own recorded stuff, because we don't like hearing our voice on an answer machine, let alone an hour of us chatting or whatever. But there's a possibility. If you're sitting with other people, one other person or a whole group of them, again, one word may come and it might feel like there's this great, almost like as if you're having to heave the word out your lips. And then another word might come or not. But the point is, if it's like the finger in the dam. If you don't take your finger out, the action of letting speech come, you're resisting it. If you're, now again, this is personal opinion, okay? But if you resist, you're sending a contra signal to the other world about wanting to cooperate and wanting to work in that way. And that can then sometimes then make us struggle more. So remember when we said at the first episode of this, everything is about a level and a degree of blending. When we start, and a degree of influence, when we start to speak, we may feel very present, very conscious, very aware. If you read people like Harry Edwards, when he discusses trance, he says that a huge majority of what might come out might be coming out from the medium. Might be coming from the medium. It might be thoughts you have, feelings you have, beliefs you have, but somewhere in there, there will be a percentage of the spirit. And the more that you allow it to come, the greater the influence can come. Now, it doesn't mean that every time you sit, you always have to talk, okay? But if you feel the inspiration to speak, to say, to express something, do it. Go with the feeling. If you get the feeling to move, if you get the feeling, I don't do it now because I think I'll fall over, my issue in my mind. But when I first used to do trance, I would be even in a blacked out room in a circle. They'd stand me up and walk me around a very tiny circle room over everybody's legs in pitch black without hitting, touching or knocking anyone. And it was fascinating. I mean, God, if I had sat on someone, I'd have probably crushed them. But when you're working, when you're doing, respond to what's happening to you. I can feel that, I'm aware of that, or I'm going to move with that. Or you suddenly sort of feel your body wants to come upright, So it's allowing this to come. Yes, it is like when you give a message, is that me, is that spirit? Because it's we. And if the blending builds, if you respond, the blending is building. You're going with it. You're surrendering to that flow of expression. If you're going, is it me? Is it them? Is it this? Is it? You're struggling. You're not allowing. Again, if we acknowledge there's always going to be us in there somewhere, this is going to help us to let go of the idea of is it one thing or the other, and to let it prove itself over time. This isn't something. We've got 2 weeks till the next talk. I'm not expecting you to suddenly go, oh my God, in 2 weeks I've done this, and this. It's not like that. We've separated these out so that you've got a bit of time to go away and work, and we've got a bit of time to chat with you both here and with the groups and things. But this is about building and blending, building and blending, building and blending over months, if not years. This isn't about do it once or twice. Do it once or twice. That's it. You don't need to do it anymore. Sit and blend, sit and blend, sit and blend. What I find fascinating is that as you're building in things, you have just got to go with what comes. This is where recording what goes on, making notes. Yes, I like that. From spirit, through spirit, to spirit. It's all we. There's no separation. But as we're building notes, as we're building things that come, spirit will endeavor always to prove the reality of their existence to you as their medium, and also if you're sitting in a group to the sitters. So there will be things that are said, there will be things that are done that are significant. I'll give you an example of this. When I sat in the first circle where the trance state was obviously exhibiting itself, but the circle leader wasn't very helpful to me. I had an experience of sitting and seeing these water bugs in the water, flowing through the water, and then trying to struggle up reeds and rocks and everything else. And the spirit world were explaining to me that this is like life, that you're struggling up and you get to the water's level, the surface of the water, and then as that bug cocoons, it then transforms into a dragonfly and is free. And that's the process of death. Free from the body, flying around, free from the struggle. You can come down to the water's edge to look in and say hello to the other water bugs, but you'll never be able to go back in the water because you're not of the water anymore. You're now, which I thought was wonderful. And I recounted it to the circle. 2 weeks later, at the bookshop I was working in, a lady came in and said, "Oh, can I order this book, Water Bugs and Dragonflies," by this lady? And I was like, "Oh, great." And I thought it was a spotter's guide because we were in a country bookshop and everything was about animals. When it turned up, and I've got a copy of the book upstairs, it was called Water Bugs and Dragonflies, A Way of Explaining Death to Children.
Oh.
So 2 weeks later, in my hands was placed a book of the full analogy of what the spirit world had showed me. So they were proving the reality of their existence to me at those points when I didn't know what was happening within the mediumship. So it's a wonderful thing. So there was a proof that came. You know, the spirit world. I'll give you another example of this, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it. A friend of mine had a student who had an Oriental guide called Ming, who would come and work through her. And they put out the thought again about wanting proof and evidence of the reality of Ming. Now, my friend, her mentor, had gone to Australia to do some demonstration and some teaching work. And while she was in Australia, she went to a flea market. And while she was walking around the flea market, she was impressed to buy a piece of jewellery for my friend Sonia. And she said, "But Sonia won't like this. Sonia won't want to wear this." But she brought it back. And so when she met, she said, "Sonia, now I've bought this for you." But she said, "I know it's not going to be your thing, but I was impressed to buy it for you." So she hands over this little box. And when Sonia opened it, it was a piece of jewellery which had a piece of pottery in it. And on the label in the top of the box, it said, "A genuine piece of Ming porcelain."
Oh.
And so then Sonia gave that to the student who was asking for the confirmation and the proof of that Ming was real. And so it didn't come just through the two mediums who knew about it. It touched the mind of another medium who didn't, and was brought back for that person. So when we put out to the other world, "Help me to know this is real. Help me to know this is true," proofs will come to us. We can't sit and literally hold on to every little bit of, is it right, is it wrong? We're going to drive ourselves crazy in that way. We've got to be able to accept that with this blending, the ebb and flow, we're going to, if we start speaking and start bringing words, we might still be quite conscious.
Yes.
We might still be earwigging a great deal. I do. I listen in. When I first used to sit, sometimes the spirit world would start speaking and would say things I was totally opposed to in my beliefs about the spirit world. And I would try and pull it back. And when I did that, my knees would shake, my legs would shake, that I'd lose control with the voice and what was coming. I was an interfering monkey. And then they would just say, "Now just be quiet, be still." And I'd have to stop. And then they'd start again and the flow would reestablish itself.
Yeah.
But you see, it's that we need to do. We need to let it come. We need to let it express itself to find out what it is, who it is, where it connects, why it's coming, what they're wanting to say. And, you know, the spirit world, you know, sometimes people are very heavy on wanting to have absolute proof of who it is and that they're a real person and everything else. Now, obviously, you know, we might be able to find that information out with the wonderful powers of the internet nowadays, but it might go back to an era or a time that maybe we can't prove. Maybe we can't get that ultimate proof. So the other world will always have ways of bringing us some confirmation of what's there. But the thing is, it's not always about who your guide was, but what your guide comes to say. That's important. You know, it's no use having the Queen of Sheba as your guide if she speaks complete gibberish and nonsense. The other world should know. The other world are observing you as their medium. They know what's going on in your life. They're aware of you, you know, our frailties, our strengths and weaknesses. They're aware of our life and what's going on in our life. So they're very aware of these things. They're keenly aware of them. And so again, as things come, they're not going to be ignorant of those things. If you sit with a group of people, they're going to know about what's going on with that group of people as well. They're going to be able to bring information, not necessarily always clairvoyance, but they'll talk about something, and one of the people in the room will be sat there going, "You're reading my mind." There was things that, in last night's sitting with a group of students, there were things that were talked about which harken back to conversations I'd had the previous week that these mediums were not privy to. So it's proving something, it's going beyond, it's starting to take us in that direction. That's where we get the proof, and that's where our confidence in what's happening will come. And that's where, if we're wanting to speak, I would suggest that you sit with one or more other people so that you have an interaction there. I really do. Yes, you can sit and develop the blending one-on-one. Even if you use things like Zoom, you can sit for each other. Remember that you don't have to talk every time. When I used to have a group sit for me many years ago, whenever I would sit, I would get a lot of overshadowing in my face. Okay, we would get a lot of overshadowing, and therefore people would think that because they saw my face change, it meant that somebody was there who was going to speak. So I would get this from my sitters: hello, 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 friend, hello, hello, and it would bring me back, and I'd come back and I'd say, I'm not a budgie. Stop sitting. When they want to talk, they'll talk. Now, some mediums, again, this is a personal thing, this is a personal opinion. I would personally say I don't want people to encourage someone who is sitting to talk out loud, as in, I wouldn't have someone sitting there and going, come on then, hello. Reason being, I'll do it in my mind. I'll say to the spirit communicator, if you want to speak, go for it. Do it now. If I have to start initiating someone else's speech, they can become reliant on someone else being the initiator.
That's so important, Mark. This is getting to the crux of that.
Because you have people saying, I was sitting there, but I was waiting for someone to notice my guide was there. Shouldn't be about that. The other world know what's going on in that room. They know when to speak. They know when to move you into those different stages of speech. I'll give you another couple of examples of this. I was at the college one time, and we were working in the library, and we had a medium who was leading the group, and I was sat, and I felt a young man drawing close and wanting to speak, and he wasn't one of my guides or helpers, and I was sitting there going, who are you? And he's going, I want to speak to me, ma'am. And he started crying and getting tearful. And I'm going, I don't know who you are. I didn't let go to it. So here, ladies and gentlemen, have to listen to my own lessons as I go. And I didn't let go to it. And then the medium, when we finished, just as we were going, he went, I'll just have you back a minute. He said, don't stop the other world from speaking when they want to. And if you go away crying because you haven't let it happen, that's your fault and no one else's. You get me right telling off. But later I went and saw the person who this person was wanting to communicate with, and they'd got a son in the spirit world. So there was a person who wanted to communicate, so trance communication, as in a clairvoyant experience. Well, not clairvoyant, because he wanted to speak directly. It wasn't through another guiding source. So it wasn't like, a spirit guide giving a clairvoyant demonstration. He wanted to speak. And I've only had that on a few occasions where people's family have come, because again, there's a part of me that kind of goes, oh, what is this? How do I let go to this? Again, listen to what I'm saying. How do I let go to it? Because there's a part of me that wants to make sure that it's right and that it comes across well, which is within all of us, that we want it to do the best that we can. But again, we mustn't struggle with that respect. Okay. So another instance of this, sitting at the college with Glyn doing a week on trance and physical. And he said to us, right, we're all going to sit in the power. None of you are allowed to speak as you're sat there. We're going to invite the other world in, and we're going to blend with the other world. So we started doing the sitting, and within minutes of sitting, I could feel the other world. I could feel the change within me. I could feel that building. And they're going, "We want to speak. We want to speak. We want to speak." And I'm going, "No, he's told us that we can't speak." And I'm holding it back. It's almost like, feeling the power go through you. I want to speak. I want to speak. I want to speak. And then after about 15 or 20 minutes, he called us all back. And then he said, "Why did none of you speak?" And we went, "You told us not to." And he went, "I told you not to, but I told the other world if they want to, that they can do it." And what it proved was that although we'd been consciously told not to, the power built, and what we were learning by that is you learn to trust the flow of power, rather than necessarily what this is telling you. So the other world,
that's
it was
so
a bit naughty. It was a monkey.
It's so important what you're talking about, the stuff you're bringing up and the gems you're bringing up, and actually just such a small thing about not waiting for permission for somebody to speak to you and to encourage you, and how important it is to educate the people who are sitting for you, to say, "I know it feels like you're being helpful, and you've probably seen it in other seances, and you've probably seen other mediums that need that. But for me, it brings a certain level of my conscious mind coming in, because I can register one foot in one place, one foot in with the spirit. I can register that there's something happening, and so it brings me to the fore, because I want to know what's happening."
And when we talk about this depth and this blending, when we start to work, we may get used to speech, and then the other world may then start to do something else with us that doesn't require speech in that sitting. They may take us into a different level of awareness. Now, if you have a group of people that, however well-meaning, are trying to get you to speak every time you sit, they could be interfering with the process. So with this hello, hello, hello. And I said to them, "Look, the other world will speak to you when they want to speak to you. It may be a week, a month, it may be a year, and they might not speak. Don't sit there trying to make me speak or trying to make them speak, because what's happening is it's putting this pressure, and again, can be bringing back, again, I know it's in another environment, but it's like often in physical seances and things, you're told not to use the name of the physical medium that's sitting. Because if they hear their name, they think they're being called or talked to. Now, again, everybody has different opinions on that. Okay. But, when there's this blending, I'm just having a quick look at one or two of the questions.
Yeah, we are sort of an hour setting homework and doing questions.
Yes. Okay.
I think Eddie was talking about kind of
messages. I'll reply to them with the group, because I've got to ask what they mean by a few things. So with this sitting and this blending, what we want to do is start bringing out the sense of personality of who's with us. So as you're sitting, what I want you to do is ask the other world to help you to become aware of who is working with you. And then start to talk to them within your mind, regardless about talk this way, physical speech. Talk to them in the mind, hold the conversation, just where we've been opening up the mind to this sense of what do you want to say to me, and then writing it down. Start to hold that conversation there in the mind a bit more. Start to get a sense more of who's in there, who's working with you. Again, there's a question asked about what level are you in? Wouldn't worry about what level you're in with anything, because some people are very prescriptive. There are 7 levels and 7 stages, and if you do this, I couldn't tell you whether I'm up here or down there or in this or out of that. All I do is surrender to it when it's happening. I know when I'm interfering. I know when I'm pulling myself up and out of it. I know when I'm getting too involved in it. And I think that sometimes if we become too technical about, am I deep enough? Am I at this level? Am I at that level? What we can start to do is become too analytically involved in what's going on, and that in itself can get in the way of where we are.
And we get too fixated on things always happening the same way, that when we get to this level, that's when the speech comes. Oh, I'm not there yet. The speech can't come.
No. And this, I've got to get deeper, because if I get deeper, it'll be better.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that deeper is going to be better within that respect. It is what it is in that moment. Remember, every time we're sitting, we're experimenting with the power and what the power can do with us in that moment. And we can only surrender to it and allow what's happening with the other world to happen. Sometimes there can be sittings that seem like very little is happening, but there might be masses of stuff happening behind the scenes that you're totally unaware of, and thinking, well, nothing happened. Are you sure nothing happened? You might not have been aware, but other people might have been aware. Sometimes when I used to sit and have all the overshadowing, I was not always aware that there was one face, then another face, then another face, then another face coming. I wasn't always aware of that, but the people that were sitting were. They were aware of those facial changes. So, when we're sitting, it's this blending, this about how do you go deeper. Don't worry about going deeper, just keep blending. Within that blending, it'll start to take you further. Start to ask who is working with you, whether you're working with trance healing. Ask who's working there. Ask where they're taking you. What can they tell you? Even with your trance healing, with your sittings, with any of it, ask the other world before you're sitting, before you're working, about what's there. In answer to your question, Mary, I don't know whether you were here earlier, but we were talking about there's always an extent of a level between us.
Yeah,
okay,
I think
so there's always an extent. So I don't know when you came in, Mary, but there is a following of the.
After Mark had already kind of talked about the fact that it is a blending, and also you might find some use from video 1, where I think we talk about that as well, when you're just kind of starting off and kind of accepting into it.
Because it's
okay. So is that one of the homework questions, Mark?
Yes.
Who's working with me?
Yeah. So who's working with me? Sorry, darling. It's there's so many interesting things. You go here, there, and everywhere. So the proofs will come. So we want to learn who's working with us. So whether you're working within the trance healing side of things and you're interested in bringing forward that, whether you're working within the artistic or the inspirational, ask the other world to blend more with you so that you can come to know who they are. Okay. So again, some of you will already know this and will already be doing this. So what I'd be asking you to do is, those of you that are already sitting and know this, now ask the other world to start taking you further. Show me the way in this. Show me where you're going. Show me what I need to know. The same for the more advanced, to the beginners that are doing it. Sit. Who is working with me? Show me the way. Show me what I need to know. Help me. Help me to understand. And then during this week, in this time or between the videos, put questions to the other world about your mediumship, about your life, or about things that you read or see. Put it to the other world. What do you think about this? What do you see? What do you think? Now, again, we're coming back to that question. Is it going to be from my own intuition, from my own inner voice, or is it going to come from the spirit world? Well, that's where you're going to have to learn to trust what you discern as what comes from outside of you and what comes from within you. Remember when we started this, we talked about there's a sense of self-development we need to look at as well. Or that might have been in another talk I'm doing, actually. So we need to look at who we are, what we believe, what we think, what we understand and know. Then have a look at what the other world brings us. Does it go beyond our knowledge, beyond our understanding? Now, when I say beyond our knowledge, it doesn't have to be all high-minded, but does it come with a different perspective, a different thought? Does it make us reconsider maybe something that we think? So this is about starting to come to know the personalities, the natures, the flow of thought. How does it differ? How does this personality differ from you? How does the information or the way that things are said or the way that things are given differ from you? Okay. And one of the things that we talked about, and I'm just going to go back to it. One of the things we talked about from last week, and I want to bring it up again now because it's important to define. The spirit world are very engaging, loving, caring, and supporting of us. If any of you start getting a sense that what you're being told is a real ear bashing and is a real putting you down for whatever reason, I would say that's more likely to be coming from your own inner critic than from the other world. Because the other world will not tend to affect you in a detrimental way. The other world might say, we'd like it if you try to do this, or we'd like you to be able to do that, or we see that you're struggling, or whatever it may, but start saying, oh, well, you're this, you're that, you're that. And I've heard people say that their guides give them such an ear bending and putting them down. I don't necessarily think that will be your guide or helper really giving you a dressing down. So there may be your own worries, your own insecurities that are coming up into that. And that's so, don't, if you start getting the experience of that, just gently place that to one side if you can, and say, okay, I'm being hard on myself here. I'm being hard on myself. I'm giving myself an ear bending, because I've not known the other world really do that, in circles and things. It's often our own pressure, our own inner critic, and our own negativity and insecurity that often is welling up. You'll hear the saying, when you hear people saying, oh, the medium's this and the medium's that, in a very negative way. Spirit world wouldn't talk about their medium in a derogatory way. It wouldn't be of benefit to building a harmonious relationship. Personal opinion, that is. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, and really important point, actually. So thank you for bringing that one up. So to reiterate them, the kind of homework, and you can go back and watch this video again, just to kind of fully absorb it. But for the intervening 2 weeks before part 3, the third part of the video, and as Mark has said, don't put yourself under pressure. It's not saying that within 6 weeks you have a perfectly polished product. It's just some things to ponder over. So one of them is really working deeper on who is working with you, just looking to find that differentiation in personality and thought and perspective and view. Don't get hung up on calling cards. I think that's a really important point that you make, Mark, about the fact that the same person will always come through, and this is how they always come through. And also, what is the energy that Spirit are leading me into? How are they guiding me, the energy, and how they wish this to unfold and unfurl. And really asking some questions. So posing some questions, reading some things, putting things in, and getting their opinion.
And I think it's important. Have time where you sit that is just to sit and blend. And then those of you that want to experiment in certain areas, then have time to sit and experiment. Make them different sits if you can, in a way, so that we've got blending, sitting, blending with the other world, and then experimental sitting, where we then see what we can do with other people, etc., within healing or within the art, so that we're giving time to build and time to work and practice as ongoing ways of working.
Super. Thank you, Mark. I'm just going to take a couple of questions. If we've got time, we're going to squeak some questions in.
Sure.
Thank you, Roger, who's loving this. He's going to listen to the catch up and enjoy it all over again, but as many times as you like. I also put these posts into the group as well, so you've got it all in one place within the group. Mary Island is loving it. Mary, do go back to the beginning and watch it from the beginning. Kevin, very patiently waiting, Kevin. He's talking about something called light language, and about how some of the sounds coming through initially kind of aren't coherent. Could you just talk a little bit more and talk into that, if that's okay, Mark?
Well, I'll be able to talk about it very briefly, because it's not something I have experience or knowledge of. I know there are people who are doing a lot to do with light language drawings and speaking and channeling and stuff. It's not something that I have experience with, Kevin, so I can't honestly tell you. The only things I can tell you about foreign languages is that there are mediums that in the past have spoken in totally foreign languages to their own knowledge, but are languages that are interpretable in some way, shape or form. And so I can't really answer your question about light language, because it's not something I have an interesting or a connection to in any way, shape or form. So probably if you feel that you're drawn to that, you're best speaking and connecting with people who work within the channeling of that aspect of things, really. Because it's not something, and foreign languages can completely understand, and you go with it. It may have its own nature as to what it needs to be or how it needs to be expressed, but as I say, it's not something I have a connection to.
Thank you. And to go with it, and just to kind of go with vocalizing, and like you say, it's that unplugging, isn't it? It's the unplugging of the sound. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, there's a thing. I mean, Kevin will know this, because obviously I know Kevin's in America, but there are in churches you have people that speak in tongues, and it's normally interpreted by a pastor or someone else. I don't know whether light language has a similar kind of thing. I don't honestly know. I have spoken to someone who used to be in an evangelical church where they used to speak in tongues. And I said to her, so now as a spiritualist rather than an evangelical person, did you ever speak in tongues? And she said yes. And I said, and so what was your experience? And she said, the overwhelming pressure and emotion of having to do something. And it was just like you just went off on one. But she said, I can't honestly say, she said, it doesn't feel anything like trance. So for her, that sort of speaking in tongues seemed to be like the energy and the power and the fervor built up in the room. But I, as I say, with the light language stuff, I can't. Is someone saying, am I often if I'm falling asleep or waking up, it sounds like I'm making noises? Well, as we go in and out of sleep, we're drifting between our conscious and our unconscious and going into the spirit world in and out as well. So again, we might be bringing stuff up, like when we're talking in our sleep and things like that. If when you're sitting, sorry, I know I'm meant to be shutting up, but if when you're speaking in a group and the spirit will come through and start speaking and it's really quiet, there's nothing wrong with anyone in the room going, can you just speak louder? And there's nothing wrong in doing that. Or if they speak, or if the medium speaks too loudly, going, right, you're a little loud, you can just bring that down a touch. But it normally tends to be that people speak and they speak so quietly, but to them, they think they're being really loud, but of course they're not, they're just very sensitive. So, but if it's waking or falling asleep, it may be more to do with what's going on in your sleep and your dreams, Jenny, possibly. But again, it's an altered state of consciousness. So again, it's not as simple as sticking in a box.
No, we like to categorize it, don't we? Paula put a lovely comment earlier. I'm just going to have to mention it because it's so beautiful. Thank you, Paula Fry. She said she sat the other day and she heard "Hello, darling," and she was so shocked she couldn't answer.
Hello, darling.
Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Amazing. Thank you. So many people just loving it. And you know what, Mark? What's really important is creating this time, creating this space in a virtual way, this circle. And as you say, talking with like-minded people, because if you were to talk about this with anyone who wasn't developing or interested in this kind of work, then they would kind of give you a bit of a strange look. So thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Mark. I can't thank you enough. And I know I do a lot, but it's just so valuable to us.
And we will go through and look at comments and things, because there are some questions I did it last time. It took me the following day to go through you all, but I do try and answer your questions. If I don't get to them now, we'll get to them as we go.
Amazing. Thank you. And if anyone has wanting to join the group, then I will go through this, go through the comments, and I'll add you to the group. It really is a chance for us to just discuss things that come up and share tips and things that are working really well, or ask questions. And I'm in the group and Mark's in the group. So yeah, I'll add you all to that one. Some people have asked some tips about kind of further releasing and further kind of stepping away from the need to control onto the energy. And I know that's something that in part 3 we're going to be looking at further work into this, and also some tips about sitting in circle. Sitting in circle, how do you sit with people? How do you kind of manage what's going on out in the circle and managing your own process? How do you pick a circle leader? Who are the right kind of people to have to sit
for? There's a lot. And again, there's, and let me just reiterate, there's no one technique or no one way. The blending is what's essential. The blending with it, letting go to it, just letting it happen. If I could have one formula, I'd be a multi-millionaire and I'd just trot it out. But there isn't just one way. So therefore, this is why this blending, coming to know, let the other world lead you. So important, folks, really is.
Beautiful. You're such a wonderful teacher, Mark. I'm very, very lucky to know you and to have sat in your circles. And
it's lovely to be here with you all.
So thank you, everybody that's joined us this evening. Also, thank you if you are watching on a replay. We haven't forget about you, and thank you so much for everyone that shares this video with people who are in trance circles or interested or have synchronistically come across in the past couple of weeks and have mentioned it and they went, oh, I know something about that. Really do appreciate it. We are back in 2 weeks, so not next Friday, but the Friday after, on this channel from 6 till 7:30, where we're going to have part 3. And we will do a little teaser before that time just to say what's going to be coming up in that one. Amazing. Thank you, everybody that's been here this evening, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. If I don't see you before, over on the church Facebook page on Sunday at 6:15. We've got the Reverend Nick Brown, who's coming, full of energy. He should be an amazing speaker for our Sunday service. Hope to join you on Sunday, and have a good week, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye. Take care.
Bye.